2 years ago, I sat in my high school English AP4 class, struggling to figure out how the heck I'm supposed to interpret a piece of poetry written from God knows when, from God knows where. And yet now, here today, I sit on a couch talking into an iPad on Flip-a-Clip, attempting to dissect a very interesting story of censorship told through song that is Mgmt's Flash Delirium. I talk about my AP English classroom because I kind of wanted to do that kind of dissection of this work. I wanted to kind of analyze it as I would an English 4 prompt, because that's the fun thing of looking at a work, is trying to find its meaning by itself. And on top of that, because it actually comes with a music video, I'm going to be juxtaposing the lyrics to what's actually happening on screen. So right off the bat, we get this tone of nervousness and of apprehension, quite literally because the first lyrics of the song are mild apprehension. And with that, we get an image of two of the band members in a car, and one of them is just sitting awkwardly next to the other one while they await to get to their destination. But the remainder of the stanza kind of shows out this idea that they don't want to be there, with the lines distort the odds of a turnaround and the gut screams out to none, kind of insinuating this internal anxiety about what is about to unfold. The next two lines give an idea as to what the writer is trying to say with outward appearances. The line saying, "So turn it on and tune it in and stay inert," next to the images of people celebrating and having fun. You're not being inert in the sense that you don't really want to do anything. It's just that he's not going in the direction that he actually wants to go. So to him, it's tantamount to staying where you are. The next stanza kind of also plays into this bag of mixed feelings that the writer is trying to tap into. He's addressing someone, saying that they've got a backbone, and that they have a quote-unquote back way to escape a gun. But then he follows it up with saying that he's currently climbing a tree with a missing limb and he's not saving anyone, because he's putting up this facade of where he's going with his direction in life. Someone's just kind of feeding that, not really knowing that this isn't exactly what they want to do with themselves, and that they have the means to actually continue going without facing any sort of scrutiny, being the gun. But then the latter two lines show the mind of the writer saying that, once again, they're not going anywhere. They're not actually achieving the things that they would like to achieve by pursuing this path that they are expected to go. The next stanza kind of plays into this idea of frustration. The author to this point has expressed distaste, but now you kind of get a tone shift, especially with the rising and more upbeat composition of the song itself. Right, kind of this rising emotion that's rising up into this almost hatred at the state of oneself, in the sense that they want to have absolutely nothing to do with the way that they're going, right? The first line reads that he doesn't want to stay at home, that the mirror ball is throwing mold, like it's corrupted, right? That this glam that they supposedly have in their reach isn't disgusting, it's abhorrent. You can't get a grip if there's absolutely nothing to hold. No achievement there that he wanted, so there's no reason to exhort anything that they've done. And I like this next one. It says that you see the flash catch a white lily, laugh and wilt. So that kind of gets this element of decay of oneself, kind of tying in with the mold element, this sort of disgusting part where it's, if I continue going down here, I'm going to, I guess, metaphorically die on the inside, because it's something that I not necessarily regret doing, it's not something I want to do. And then you kind of get this element of rebellion, saying that if you have to smash a glass first to fill it to the hilt, it's sort of, I'm going to revolt against what people expect of me. And it's a really good statement, especially when you get all these images of people, taking photographs to commemorate some memories, these new memories and these achievements that these protagonists have supposedly accomplished. The next stanza, we get this, not admission to rebellion against it, but this glee in finding it, because this state of rebellion of what they're being told to pursue comes more natural. And we get that with actual imagery of plants like sunflowers turning towards the light to get of the sun so they can be healthy and grow. This light here in this stanza is what the author actually wants to do. And because it's something that they want to do, it feels natural and it feels good to them. Then we get more rebellious imagery with it, which is really good juxtaposed against the people doing this really cheesy, organized, like Cupid shuffle sort of thing going on, right? And if we dance until the heart explodes, it'll make this place ignite. Meaning that what we want to do is something crazy. It's not status quo. It's completely beyond the realm of what you think that we actually want to do or what we should do. It's not to your standards. It's going to break your pillars of expectations. But we are going to stand by our own, which is a pillar of hope, something that they can feed off of and grow off of. So it's this institution of the individual will over someone else's expectations. It's just that in doing so, it's going to cause a ruckus, to stay an understatement. The next stanza, in my opinion, is this perspective shift towards the status quo, because you get this element of time that's kind of dropped in there. Here's a growing culture deep inside of a corpse, timeless desperation. And then lastly, hey, there's pictures on a screen screaming, hey people, what does it mean? So what you're seeing is that you have the people who are attempting to impose the status quo upon the main character, or the opinions of the main character, this confusion at the main characters breaking from the status quo. Because they are the status quo, they get kerfuffled when anything that isn't the status quo begins to, metaphorically speaking, blows up and begins to kind of trump out the status quo. It's this confusion and this almost panic from the status quo and trying to keep everything together, and the only way that they're able to take it in right now, because it's a sudden rebellion, is confusion. The stanza immediately following this one also kind of continues this perspective of the status quo. It continues this idea of discomfort at this up-and-coming rebellion against them, essentially, from the main protagonist, by saying that comfort is keeping us nice, and that they are attaching their hands to the floor. But what makes them uncomfortable is the quickness to donate everything, to throw away one's wealth or throw away one's success. Die Wolken, which mean the clouds if you don't speak German, and the blinding smiles circling, and then obviously in parentheses, in Kreisen, which means to circle, as well, kind of getting this idea that nothing's really stable going on, this drifting element, and then that everyone around them is watching them, what they're doing in reaction to the rebellion against the status quo. And then the attaching the hands to the floor is this idea that they need to be situated and firm in comparison to whatever the chaos that the rebellion against the status quo is attempting to present forward. And then ultimately that rosy tinted flash kind of bringing back memories of the old, or trying to harken back to memories of the old, of when things were good and stable and sound. Then the next stanza goes into this idea of denial. You have imagery of the hot dogs getting cold, then someone yelling effectively out at the rebellion saying that you're not going to be as good as the Rolling Stones, and that all of your concerts are going to be empty, with this idea of the birds gathering the airport in the dirt, and then someone flashing themselves, kind of implying that, oh, what you're doing is down and dirty and disgusting, right? And you're not going to make it. When whatever you do, it's going to be putrid as a result, and you're not going to go anywhere. And that's that idea of it, denial, that the status quo is just kind of projecting outward, that the rebellion is actually doing well, despite the fact of them having the power over the mainstream. In the music video, the most candid allusion to censorship by the status quo is made when you have the main protagonist begin speaking out of his throat, and then you have this whole eel-looking thing get ripped out of it, as in the status quo is trying to take away from him his voice, his motivations, his dreams, his aspirations, and they're crushing it, and they're taking this eel, his voice, and they're sticking it into this gross-looking iron lung-looking thing that's finally going to censor it and kill it. And I think that's the biggest hint at the fact that the status quo in this book, the one that the protagonist is railing on and on and on about, is antagonizing him by censoring him. But then ultimately what we get is this collapse of the status quo with the final two stanzas. The penultimate stanza has this repetitive imagery of looking at the sun and plastic ghosts and, quote, geometric troops, burial mounds, and heaviness and lightness. And essentially what we have with the allegiance to the sun, of trying to look at it and gaze upon it, is this idea that you're doing something, that you're giving yourself to something that's great but still hurts you. Because even if you have an eye closed and you're looking at the sun, it's going to burn, right? And these ideas of plastic ghosts, the use of the word plastic implies the same clean-cut sellout to the mainstream pop crowd. And the same thing with the geometric troops being carried up to the burial grounds, as he's talking to others who've basically given themselves up to the status quo as their trailblazers, but have had their careers die as a consequence of that. And he refers to someone else in there, like a companion to lean on that helps them fight on, continuing this little fight against the status quo, which is why they're able to stay light against this overwhelming force. And this repeats, and you also get the allusion back to the pillar of hope, which they stand upon in order to advance their own dreams and aspirations. And then you essentially get this descent into almost confusion and chaos, especially in the music video. When you overlap it, you have chaos erupt in the dining room hall that they're in with the lyrics. But I want to emphasize mostly on the major, the final one, being sue the ciders, seek the Welsh, stab your Facebook, sell, etc., etc. Basically, it's just this blaring commands given by the status quo to the people is what it is, in my opinion. It's really kind of calling it out at the last three lines, or last four lines, being mass adulation isn't so funny, poisoned honey, pseudoscience, silly money, you're my honey. It's trivializing some certain things, and it's pointing out that mass adulation and other things like it are trivializing and vapid in juxtaposition to the crazy chaos which the protagonist thrives upon. Now, I very could have easily just gone to some website like Google or Genius and looked up an explanation to this song, because it's something that, if you're not used to looking at poetry or music and trying to dissect lyrics and the meaning of words, it's not usually going to do too well. I'm not saying either that my analysis by itself is some sort of gold standard. This is just my opinion, and this was just my attempt at trying to isolate this song by itself and treat it as an entity by itself, and then trying to analyze it, kind of going into it blind. But I think it is pretty easy to come to that same conclusion by looking at the music video and juxtaposing it to the lyrics themselves, and kind of coming to this conclusion that the song Flash Delirium is about this conflict. It is this conflict of interests on a grand scheme. It is a conflict between an individual attempting to pursue their own creative vision, their own musical tastes, and their own dreams and aspirations, whilst being underneath the immense pressure of corporate attitudes of the music industry, trying to cram them into this little box that they see as the way forward for music. You know, not really anything trailblazing, but the same clean-cut stuff that gets the money, basically. I do hope you all enjoyed this little analysis video. I enjoyed making it. I like doing analysis stuff like this. I like breaking down pieces of music and books and everything of this sort for your entertainment purposes. If you enjoyed, please give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe, etc., etc. Follow me on my Twitter down below. Go follow Cynical Jackfish down below. He did the thumbnail art for this video. He does astounding stuff. And this little video is dedicated to my good friend at Ferret Alligator on Twitter. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. This was an amazing idea, and I really enjoyed making this video. See y'all next time, I guess.